So we all pretty much know how we got here, but why did we get here? And many people know who was responsible for us getting here, right? That's Sir Stamford Raffles. And in many ways, when I was thinking about this, Stamford Raffles was really Singapore's first pioneering and probably most audacious entrepreneur. And what was the story of Raffles before he came to Singapore? There was a big conflict between Dutch and the British in this part of the world to dominate trade routes. And Raffles, a young officer in the East India Company, was told by his bosses, like, you know, we need to beat the Dutch. And we need to find a port, right? And you need to do this or else we're curtains. And so he sailed forth from Penang to find this new port that was going to give the British Empire a competitive advantage. So we all know he ended up in Singapore, and Singapura was the ultimate startup, right? It's this barren, empty, sandy island with a deep harbor offshore, and Raffles looked at it and says, okay, you know, I can see the potential and future in this place. And so how did he create something from literally sand? He had two radical ideas. One, free port. All the other ports around the cities and around this region, you had to pay port duties, right, whenever a ship came to port, right? And that was, it's like, okay, you know, if we give it free, I think that would be a great way of enticing people to come to Singapore. And we sometimes think of this internet revolution as radical, right? It's like, wow, you know, the internet is really challenging because suddenly everything is free. But the idea of free is as old as 200 years. The second thing he did was made the port free to all, right? The Dutch ports only allowed Dutch ships to port there, right? British ships, French ships, any other ships were not allowed to port, right? It was a monopoly, exclusive. So in order to make Singapore successful, he came out with this second radical idea. Make it open to everyone, regardless of nationality and the flag on your ship. So really, radical openness is the reason why Singapore is here today, and we're all here today because of this fundamental philosophy. So the whole story of Singapore is that we subsequently built our success on free trade, right? Bringing things from China, from the Spice Islands, all the way to markets in Europe. So this was the story for very much of the last 200 years, even to today, and it will continue, right? Because there are always physical things to be shipped. But let me show you another radical map. And this may not look so familiar to you. Anybody has any guesses what this could be? Okay, this is the map of the internet, right? The blue lines that you see here are interconnections between the cities, which are on the outer rim of the circle. Fortunately, you can see the little red dot. That's Singapore plugged into this new map of interconnected world. So the question that we have here today is, how do we succeed in this new map of the world? What sort of values, what sort of skills do we need? You know, because arguably the most valuable things we're trading now is not so much, you know, in what we make, like this object here, but what we can create in our minds and then ship over literally the internet rather than putting it on a boat. So I have three interesting suggestions to you. One is be a sponge. So be open to ideas coming in from everywhere. And we're fortunate because we're connected to the world, you know, with the internet and broadband. Number two, we need to have a culture where we are sharing ideas, right? We're bringing our ideas closer together, right? We may be, you know, however brilliant or smart as individuals, But we are increasingly seeing how brilliant we are when we bring our ideas together, when we tap on collective intelligence. And third, of course, find ways to share our ideas, to ship our ideas out of Singapore and with the rest of the world. So the interesting thing about it is that while we want our ideas to be spread and to be heard elsewhere, people are actually also looking around for the same thing, right? And they are actually connecting to you, whether in a sense you like it or not. And that's a great, incredible phenomenon that we're living in today. So the second message I have to you is be radically open. I'm really amazed when I compare these maps, which really span 200 years now. The first map was when Raffles landed at the mouth of the Singapore River. You can see almost the exact spot where the picture is illustrating, and the radical difference that it's made over this time. And we often think about the future as, what will the future hold? What will the future be? But really, we're living in an age where the future is in our hands, right? It is up to us as individuals, and it's really in our heads, because it's in our, minds and our ideas that can create things. And I'd like to end by sharing this quote from a German physicist, which goes, "Everyone is a genius at least once a year, and the real geniuses simply bring the ideas closer together." And I would like to add to that, and the truly ingenious share and spread the ideas to make them a reality. So carpe diem, and thank you very much.